Turn off cell phones.
Yes, those are nice, yes, yeah. Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lancaster County Planning Commission, January 17th, 2024. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, is available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. If you parked in the parking lot across the street to the north, the gate is open. No parking coupons are needed. Out of the courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. Please note, the Planning Commission action today is final on the following three items. 1.5, use permit 125B, 1.7, county special permit 23048, and 5.1, county special permit 23042. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or the County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held January 3rd, 2024.
Move approval of minutes.
Second, Edens?
Cruz,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Bite,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
We will now proceed with today's agenda. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there's anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item that is on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, please call the items on the consent agenda.
I want to please note that agenda item 1.6, special permit 20016A, which is to amend the Wilderness Hills Townhomes CUP Community Unit Plan to expand the boundary by an additional 1.98 acres on the north side of South Creek Road to include 14 additional dwelling units on property generally located at the northeast corner of South 27th Street and Rokeby Road, is being withdrawn today as requested by the applicant and removed from today's consent agenda. No further action is needed on this application. I will also note that agenda item 1.8, miscellaneous 23011, is being removed from the consent agenda and scheduled for public hearing. First item is item 1.1, comprehensive plan conformance 23020, to review as to conformance with the 2050 Lincoln Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, the College View redevelopment plan to support redevelopment and other enhancements within the College View area, consisting of 73 acres located between South 46th Street on the west, Hillside Street on the north, South 49th Street on the east, and Linden Street on the south. Included within the redevelopment plan is the Pioneers Mixed Income Row House redevelopment project to include a construction of a multifamily residential development and associated amenities generally located at 4618 Pioneers Boulevard. Item 1.2, annexation 23013 to annex 157.62 acres on property generally located at North 84th Street and Havelock Avenue. Item 1.3, text amendment 23017 to amend the Lincoln Municipal Code, Section 27.63.110, special permit for garden centers to adjust the front yard setback in the AG and AGR zoning districts from 100 feet to 50 feet. Item 1.4, change of zone 23075 from R3 residential to O3 office park for property generally located at 4420 Lucille Drive. Item 1.5, use permit 125B, an amendment to the preserve on Antelope Creek use permit to expand the use permit by 0.70 acres with adjustments to setbacks for property generally located at 4420 Lucille Drive. This is final action. Item 1.7, County Special Permit 23048 to allow for the West Pioneer Cedar View AG CUP to allow 5 single-family dwelling units on property generally located at Southwest 135th Street and West Pioneer Boulevard. This is also final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
Also, no.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items, please stand and state that item.
Okay, we would entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Move approval of consent agenda?
Second, Edens?
Cruz.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Consent agenda approved, 6-0.
There are no requests for deferral, so we will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and/or included as a part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. Lights will appear on the monitors provided. The clerk will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. The red light indicates that your 5 minutes has expired, and once the final minute has lapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the Commission votes to defer action or to continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Item 1.8, miscellaneous item 23011, to review the proposed determination that the former Sears and Environs redevelopment area, Shops at Lincoln, meets the statutory definition of a blighted and substandard area as defined in the Nebraska Community Development Law. The study area is 51 acres, generally located between Vine on the north, North 66th Street on the east, O Street on the south, and North 56th Street on the west. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
Nope.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Peter Hine, Director of Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. Glad to be in front of you today with this blight study for Sears, exciting project for us to be considering. You've had the blight study in front of you. What we're really doing today is asking you to consider adding the right-of-way of 66th Street and O Street that are adjacent to this for a number of reasons to help us repair some of the maintenance on O Street. And also we, through initial discussions with our transportation engineering, we're going to be looking at closing one of the curb cuts coming into the site to help with some traffic flow and access to the site. So it's really just an expansion of the study to include the right-of-way. And I can answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Mr. Hyde? Not at this time. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Testimony from, I mean, you are the applicant as well.
We're the applicant.
So yeah, we'll do testimony and support.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission. Danae Kalkowski, 1128 Lincoln Mall, Suite 105. Our office represents the Shops at Lincoln LLC, which owns the old Sears building property, and then also Southview Holding Company, and they have the old McGinnis Ford car dealership property. But obviously, speaking in support of the blight and substandard designation for this area, the blight study obviously is that first step to allowing us to move forward with redevelopment of both of these sites. which have basically been vacant for a number of years. I think the Sears since 2019 and the McGinnis Ford since 2011. So first step in allowing us to implement a process that would hopefully help us get some more viable uses going there. I think you'll be seeing the redevelopment plan soon, and there's some, I think, planned uses that'll be new to Lincoln, and obviously getting these filled back up would enhance and increase employment in the area and be good for everybody in the community. So we're just speaking in support, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I think you can look forward to seeing more of us on the redevelopment plan and redevelopment agreement.
Questions? All right,
Great,
thanks.
thank you.
Additional testimony and support? Anyone here to testify in a neutral capacity or testimony in opposition? Okay, any questions for staff? Probably no need for applicant rebuttal, but just in case. Okay, all right. I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing. Joy?
Second, Edens?
Cruz.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
Move approval. Joy?
Second, Cruz.
Discussion.
I wanted to bring up really quickly, I said no ex parte communication, but the urban development director was at the mayor's roundtable, and I think very, very briefly, he mentioned the Sears project on there. So however we need to record that so that I'm on the up and up, I'd appreciate it.
Just for clarity, I want to make sure that the motion includes the right-of-way.
Excuse
Yes.
me. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure it's on the record.
Yep.
All right, so we are currently discussing the motion to approve with the addition of the right-of-way. Okay,
Yeah.
any additional discussion at this time? Shelley?
Cruz.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved, 6-0. Next item is item 4.1, text amendment 23016, amending Lincoln Municipal Code 27.67, parking to remove minimum parking requirements for B2, B5, O3, RT, and all H&I districts, and removing special parking conditions that apply to those districts, amending 27.64 use permits to remove parking requirements on all previously approved use permits, amending 27.63.470 planned service commercial to remove parking requirements on all previously approved planned service commercial special permits, amending 27.60 planned unit development district to remove parking requirements on all previously approved planned unit developments that reference parking standards from a district with no parking requirements. I will note that a staff memo dated 1/16 was sent to Planning Commission members identifying minor updates to the parking proposal included with text amendment 23016. Are there any ex parte communications that to be disclosed on this application?
Yes.
So this was discussed briefly within the Clinton neighborhood fines of just what it was. And I also believe it was at Mayor's Roundtable at one point, but I missed that meeting, but it was in the minutes. There you go.
All right. Well, good afternoon, commissioners. The subject heading is a mouthful, but essentially what we're here to do is look at modernizing Lincoln's Paul Barnes with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. I don't do that very often, but. So yeah, we're here to look at a text amendment to modernize Lincoln's off-street parking requirements in the commercial districts. This has been talked about for a few years now. Really, a conversation got initiated locally during the comprehensive plan update, and then was embodied in that document as a recommendation going forward. So we are excited about this. It is a rather large change across the community that I think we'll see some change over time with. And I'll note that we're the first in Nebraska as a municipality to bring this forward. So also I'm excited about that. I will turn it over to Andrew, who's going to walk through some slides, and then we can answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Andrew Theroff, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. So we did do the briefing 2 weeks ago where we shared a presentation. This is a much shorter version of that presentation, but we do have a few slides we want to walk through just so everyone's on the same page about the proposal. So in a broad sense, the proposal has two elements: eliminating automobile parking minimums for most of our commercial and industrial zoning districts, and we'll get into those details in a minute. And then also, we are maintaining existing minimum parking requirements in residential districts and then a few commercial districts that are typically found near neighborhoods. So what are the goals we're trying to achieve with parking modernization? There's a few. Promote economic development, allowing more flexibility to develop sites, potential cost savings for businesses, allow for more market-driven parking decisions. Today, when a developer comes in with a commercial or industrial plan, they have numbers they have to meet in terms of parking. With this change, the market would then be able to make that decision instead of us in the city counting out parking stalls. We'd like to encourage redevelopment of vacant or underutilized sites, including underutilized parking lots. So the comp plan, Plan Forward 2050, has a goal of 12,000 infill units by 2050. So that was approved back near the end of 2021. We've had about 2,000 infill units since then, so we're well on our way to achieving that goal. We want to remove barriers to compact development, reducing the urban sprawl effect. So if a developer doesn't want to build a large sprawling site, we don't want to force them to do so through parking requirements. And then again, just reiterating, we do want to continue to support parking requirements near residential areas. So this wasn't the comp plan. It was actually a policy. Policy 11 said that we should eliminate or reduce parking requirements in additional zoning districts beyond downtown. So as part of the comp plan process, the reason we added that policy is because a lot of other Midwestern cities have been doing this lately, and that numbers continue to grow since the comp plan was done. So just in recent years, these red dots are all the communities in our area who have eliminated parking requirements. Many of these cases, they actually eliminated it for all zoning districts. So we're not being quite that bold with this initial step, but we are following what some of these other communities have done. So examples are Buffalo, and the reason we mentioned Buffalo is because they were the first large city to get rid of parking requirements. So they're one that kind of is a model for a lot of other places. Fayetteville is our other big model where they are kind of a college town. They have a major university there. They're about half the size of Lincoln, but still a lot of the similar things we look at in terms of like college student parking and things like that. Some other communities, and all of these are also have major universities: Lexington, Kentucky, Ann Arbor, Michigan, South Bend, Indiana, and then Minneapolis and St. Paul both got rid of parking requirements in 2022. So a little more details on our proposal. So as we mentioned, getting rid of parking minimums for most commercial and industrial zoning districts. So first, we want to look at use permits. So all of our use permit districts. So that's B2, B5, O3, I3, and then RT. So we'd get rid of parking minimums for those districts. Those districts do still require a use permit. So any new application that comes through needs to go through Planning Commission. You have site plan review ability. So we're not getting rid of the use permit requirement. We're just getting rid of the idea that there's some sort of minimum parking number you have to meet as part of that use permit. And then we also have all of our H and I districts. So our H districts are like our heavy commercial, light industrial districts, and then our I districts are our industrial districts. There's a little bit of a nuance to that too with some of our other types of approvals. Planned unit developments, PUDs. All of our previous PUDs that use parking standards from one of those districts we mentioned, they would then have no parking requirements. Those would be removed as well. And then the other item is special permits. That's what the memo that you received yesterday talks about. So this is something we always intended to have in there, and it was just inadvertently left out. But any special permits that were previously approved and located in one of these zoning districts, they would then have their parking requirements removed. As an example, indoor theaters in B5, they need a special permit. So if we get rid of parking requirements in B5, it doesn't really make much sense for the theater to still have their own parking requirements with a special permit. So this is just saying any of those special permits in those districts without minimum parking, they would then not have minimum parking either. And then we would be keeping parking requirements in our R districts, R1 through R8. B1 and B3 are kind of our neighborhood type commercial districts. And then O2 is an office district that's typically within neighborhoods or right next to neighborhoods. So this is the map we showed at the briefing. And just to kind of walk through this again, the yellow color is residential and public land, so that's not being impacted by this proposal. And you can see that's most of the city. The green colors, those are our commercial districts that are part of this proposal. These districts would now have no minimum parking. The black is downtown. It already didn't have minimum parking requirements. And then the red, those are our commercial districts, the B1, B3, and O2 that are keeping their minimum parking requirements. And you can see those are mostly tiny little 2 or 3 business specs that are in many cases within neighborhoods. So that's why we're leaving them alone at the moment. So what are the expected results from this proposal? Lincoln, of course, is a car-focused environment. Most of us get around on cars. So we expect that most businesses will continue to provide on-site parking. And that's what we've seen in all of the communities we've looked at, is that it hasn't been any radical change. Some sites within the city with limited parking ability may be redeveloped. And then there may be some sites either within the city or even along the edges that just use incrementally fewer parking stalls. Maybe with the parking requirements, they were required to have 50 stalls. Maybe they'll do 40 instead because that's all they need. The biggest impact will be long-term after multiple decades of these small incremental decreases in parking. Over a couple of years, it may be a few dozen, maybe 100 fewer stalls. Over decades, we're looking at thousands and thousands of fewer potential parking stalls. Shorter automobile trips with reduced carbon emissions. That goes back to kind of the urban sprawl idea and how parking lots are making commercial developments bigger than they need to be. And then finally, just in general, a more vibrant urban environment that supports multiple modes of transportation. I do want to touch on the outreach that we did for this. We did quite a bit more outreach than a typical text amendment would have. We gave presentations to interested stakeholder groups. Some of these groups here are listed: Neighborhood Roundtable, Resilient Lincoln Roundtable, Citizens Climate Lobby, Realtors Association of Lincoln, LIBA, and then the Chamber of Commerce. And generally at those meetings, it was an overall positive response. We also sent emails to we have a list of developers and neighborhood reps. We sent that information out to everyone. And then we did the briefing here on January 3rd. So a couple final items. This will include about 95% of Lincoln's commercial and industrial acreage. So it is essentially all of our commercial industrial land. This does allow private sector to be in control of parking on their property. This also can create lower costs for developers, owners, tenants, and businesses. And then the final point we want to make is that the added efficiencies of city infrastructure provides opportunities to invest in future growth. So we're not just focused on sprawling infrastructure. We have other things that we can invest in. With that, we'll take any questions. Yeah.
So for those that were previously approved, so special permits, PUDs, things like that, if they determine, they want to adjust their layout or whatever because of these no minimum parking requirements, do they have to come back through the process to come back to us and approve a new plan without the parking?
Yeah, for the most part they do. If it's small changes, we can do it administratively in the planning department, but any major change where they're reconfiguring the site, it would need to go back through planning commission and in some cases city council.
Additional questions for Andrew? Yeah, go ahead.
Not so much a question, but you did mention during our briefing that this would help eliminate heat islands and possibly improve on stormwater runoff as well. I think that's important to consider among the other benefits that will come from this.
All right, additional questions? I think we're good right now. Thank you. We would now take testimony in support.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Katie Bollmeyer, 1128 Lincoln Mall. For those of you that don't know me, I am the business policy advocate for the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. I'm very thankful to be in front of you today. And I also want to express my sincere gratitude to Councilman Beckius for bringing this forward to our leadership, not only once, but twice. It's a very brave act on his part. And we're very thankful for him coming and giving this presentation and sharing his expertise in this field and engaging with us at the Chamber. It's really easy. My job's super easy after following a presentation. So I will just echo, we believe this is a great economic value to our community. Anytime we can give businesses the flexibility to make their own decisions and coming up with the correct choices, we are always an advocate for, and there's so many benefits. So we just wanted to express that support. And if there's any questions, I'd be glad to take it, but I am done.
Questions? All right. Thank you very much. Additional testimony and support? Any, excuse me, anyone here in neutral capacity or testifying in opposition? Okay. Has anybody thought of any additional questions for Andrew or Paul? Okay.
I'll just say real quick, we do want to make sure the motion includes the special permit memo addition.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So close the public hearing first. I move to close the public hearing. Joy?
Second, Edens?
Cruz?
Yes.
Edens?
Yes.
Fight?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
I move approval of the text amendment 23016 to include the memorandum received on January 16th, 2024.
Second, Edens?
Discussion? Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I can't imagine someone building a retail spot or a service and not put in adequate parking. And I think maybe our requirements prior to this being adopted were maybe exorbitant. I mean, you look at some of these parking lots that are never half full. I think the developers will put in enough and not too much.
I am in support of the text amendment and the memorandum. I think that the city has done a great job of looking at it holistically, and it makes a lot of common sense to put it in the hands of the business owners and also some of the climate that fellow commissioners mentioned, helping the city with those types of projects and infill.
Yeah, I too am in full support of this. I'm very excited for our city to join some of the other communities around the country that are taking this action. And I was really thrilled to hear that we've already seen 2,000 of our 12,000 goal for infill already, just since the approval of the comprehensive plan. So I'm very excited about this, and I look forward to not having to look at acres and acres of parking lots sitting empty, but really more vibrancy for our community. So thanks. All right, Shelley?
Cruz?
Yes.
Edens?
Yes.
Fight?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 6-0. Next item, item 5.1, County Special Permit 23042 for personal wireless facilities to allow a 239-foot self-support tower on property generally located at 7459 West Roca Road. This is final action. I will note that a staff memo dated 1/16/24 was also sent to Planning Commission members identifying addition to the staff report for Special Permit 23042. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No?
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
No. All right.
Okay. Good afternoon, Brian Will, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. So, County Special Permit 23042. Where we're at here is out west of Lincoln in unincorporated portions of the county. Just southwest of the intersection of Southwest 72nd, West Roca Road. It's about 100 and 50-acre parcel, give or take, mostly farm and ag use on the property at the current time. There is a old farm residence just immediately to the west of the proposed location, but where the tower is proposed to be sited is the location of this red dot right here. So the application for the Planning Commission today is for a personal wireless facility, 239 feet in height. That would be a lattice tower, triangular sort of lattice tower, and it would be required to accommodate up to 3 carriers. So the applicant's side view elevation depicting what the tower would look like is this. Currently, the proposed carrier would be located at the top of the tower. As I mentioned, towers in over or in excess of 100 feet in height would have to accommodate up to 3 carriers, and so it does show proposed locations for 2 others. This application originally was scheduled for the Planning Commission about a month ago, and if you read the staff report, the initial staff review was essentially checked all the boxes. The Planning Department was recommending approval of it. It was after that review was written that the Planning Department came to understand that there's another tower in the area, and it's located maybe approximately right here. It's about 0.8 of a mile away. We knew of the location of that tower. However, it had 3 carriers on it. So by the regulations, it would have fulfilled its requirement. It was accommodating all of the carriers it would be required to. So we would consider that as full. And I think partially demonstrating the need for perhaps another tower in the area. Now, we know who the original applicant for that tower was, perhaps the owner. We don't know who the other carriers are. And so we came to find out that actually the carrier that is proposed to go on this tower here that we're talking about today was one of those carriers. And so that carrier was proposing to move. And so it kind of raised the question in the staff, in the mind of the Planning Department was, well, okay, we have a carrier currently providing coverage in the area. Seems like there needs to be some sort of demonstration of increased coverage, public service benefit to the area to people receiving coverage. And so we had asked for some additional information along those lines. We assume, well, if a carrier is moving and somebody's willing to build a tower, that there must be some rationale behind that. So I guess I would add that as you look through the county, which by the way are about identical to the city's wireless regulations, it talks about preference locations. This location, in my opinion, is a sensitive location because of proximity to other residences. Now, granted, we're out in, there's a lot of agriculture out here, a lot of separation among uses. However, there are other residences in the area, and by my definition, that is a sensitive location. The regulations talk about eliminating other co-location possibilities within a half mile. So strictly speaking, this one does that. The other tower is a half mile away, or 0.8 of a mile away. In response to the inquiry from the Planning Department about providing some additional information, and this was the memo that was emailed out to the Planning Commissioners yesterday, they did submit some additional information. There's a letter of explanation from the RF engineer for Verizon, as well as a coverage map. Now, my response to that was, okay, the coverage map didn't come with a legend or explanation. I think we can probably all look at it and maybe guess what it means, but I was suggesting that it should probably have a better explanation to go with it. We would have provided that to the Planning Commission and tried to explain that. The applicant's response was they didn't intend to do that at this time. They would provide that explanation here today, okay? And so I suppose barring that graphic showing differential in differential in coverage, barring it meaning something other than what we think it does, showing increased coverage, our recommendation as it is here today is still for conditional approval, okay? So I would leave that memo as it is and let the applicant go ahead and present and explain that graphic and the letter that was provided. So with that, I'd be happy to go ahead and answer any questions Planning Commission might have.
I have just a quick question for right now, which is, so the height is 235 feet, and the lease area shows a width of, I think it looks like maybe 25 feet. So I was just wondering about at the base, it's 3 sides. What is the length of one side? It's about 23 feet. I was trying to look through and figure out where that was. I was just trying to get an idea of the size at the base.
I'm going to have the applicant verify when they get up here. Yeah, that the lease area itself is 100 by 100. Okay, and within that, the tower, there's a smaller lease area for the Verizon equipment, which is 25, looks like 25 square feet. Yeah, the dimensions of the tower at the bottom.
That's fine. I can ask the applicant.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I don't, you're right. It's a good question. I don't see it on any of the plans that I have here in front of me. Yeah, I can't say.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, Rich?
The one letter that we got a month ago when this was first proposed concerned the 5G possible health benefits. Have you passed this through the health department and gotten their?
Yeah, I don't think you meant health benefits, maybe.
Oh, health. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Health concerns.
Maybe I read it wrong.
No, health concerns.
Yes, there have been concerns, and we did pass that along to the health department, and we asked Chris Schroeder with the health department to come today to specifically address that. By the way, I would add that sort of issue, frequency, interference, etc. Local governments, local authorities are specifically prohibited from using that as part of consideration for facilities like this. That is, we can't document that there is some sort of detriment to frequency interference or health effects from these types of facilities. So we are specifically prohibited by federal regulation from considering that. However, having said that, I'll go ahead and let Chris address that question.
Good afternoon. Chris Schroeder with Health Department, 3131 O Street. So based upon the peer-reviewed scientific papers that we evaluated, the current scientific consensus is that 5G technologies, when operated within established guidelines and regulations, and by the way, in the United States, that's the FCC, do not pose a significant health risk to the general public. However, we still would recommend ongoing research, or we would support ongoing research and monitoring are essential to ensure the continued protection of the public's health. So, any questions?
Nope. Thank you.
Oh, what?
I do, not for you.
Oh, okay. For Brian.
I'll be here.
Yeah, you, sorry. You mentioned that you have a half-mile guideline, that you can't have these towers more, closer than a half mile. I was looking for that and couldn't find it. Doesn't matter the height, like, because the other tower's shorter, correct? So does it matter on height, it's still a half mile even?
No, yeah, that doesn't matter. I mean, I think, you know, as you look around the city, you don't see many towers this tall. And it's because we have more of them. And we would rather, I think, in an dense urban environment like this, we'd rather have shorter towers in proximity to our homes, businesses, et cetera. I think when you move out in the county where there's greater separation, there's much less density, taller towers are probably more appropriate. And we do that in the city. Industrial areas where we have larger sprawling sites with industrial buildings, that's where we put our taller towers. Here, where we have that kind of separation among these facilities. But height, yeah, really.
No, okay.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, any additional questions for Brian at this time? Might be some more later, I think.
Okay.
Okay, thank you
Yep.
very much. All right, we'll now ask for
Hi.
testimony from the applicant.
I'm not the applicant.
Okay, so you'll be up here in a bit.
Okay, thank you.
First, it's testimony from the applicant.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ryan Streff, 8305 East Willow Leaf Street, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'm here on behalf of Tillman Towers. And
Brent Meyer with the law firm Hush Blackwell, 14606 Branch Street, Omaha, Nebraska.
So with that, I guess we're here to answer any questions that you might have for us this afternoon. This afternoon we are asking for approval, as staff has went through their staff report, of the special use permit for the 239-foot self-support tower.
All right, you said it's 239, not 235?
Yeah, so it's 235 feet is the tower itself, and then it has a 4-foot lightning rod on the top for a total of 239 feet.
Okay. Can you tell us then what's the width at the base?
So I guess to give you a couple different dimensions, without answering your question directly right away, is the lease area is 100 by 100, and then the compound is going to be 60 by 60. And then the actual tower dimensions at the base, the construction drawings, as I'm reviewing them, I don't see that exact dimension put in there. But based on information that I've had previously and looking at this particular site plan, it's approximately 20 feet by 20 feet. I know it's kind of a triangular structure, and if that's a concern or we need to give that information, Commissioners, we can definitely provide that to staff, and they can get that to you.
When you say compound, do you mean fenced-in area? What do you mean by compound?
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct. Is the compound area that they intend to complete and fence at this time is 60 by 60, knowing that in the future, when they have additional carriers, they're able to expand that within that 100 by 100 lease area to be able to fit additional carriers and their equipment at the base of the tower.
Yeah.
The lighting on the top of the tower, that's a concern for some people that have written in. And is this going to be a strobe or a flashing, just incandescent? How does that work?
Commissioner, I will take a look. I know that the FCC does regulate all the regulations for lighting. This tower is lighted. Typically anything over 199 feet needs to be lighted. I will look at the information and see if I can find that while you ask other questions.
And while you're doing that, are there any guidelines or restrictions? Obviously, it's for air traffic, and I wonder if it's possible to put up a shield or a blind so that the light does not penetrate downwards onto residential properties nearby.
Commissioner, I guess to answer that question, I'm not aware that there are equipment modifications that they make to the lighting. Again, the lighting is all regulated by the FCC. We will, I can take a look at that and we can get that answer back to you if it's not in the details I'm looking at for the lighting itself.
Thank you.
Can we address the materials that were submitted to the planning department that you said you would be providing more detail today? I was hoping that would be a part of the presentation.
Coverage map.
The coverage map.
Yes, so I guess I have the slide up. Okay, I think we're working on it. Takes a second.
minute, yeah.
All right. Oops.
There, no.
That was my fault, I think. There we go.
Okay.
You want me to cover it?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so this coverage map, just to kind of give you some context and bearings here. So the map to the left is showing the existing coverage, or the existing coverage from the existing tower. The horizontal line would be Highway 33, and then to the east is the new proposed tower. On the right side shows the proposed coverage map, the improvement to the east, and additional coverage that would be provided by the proposed tower. As far as the legend and explanation, the pink shading there is, I believe it's the RSRP greater than the -80. That represents a excellent signal. It is a measurement of the strength of the signal. So anything that is shaded pink in the right map, coverage map, additionally is better coverage. And then you have the dark blue, that represents a good signal, and then dark green would be poor. Anything below the poor signal where you have a light blue or light green is a spotty signal or no signal. So the intent with the new proposed tower is to get a excellent signal to the Blue Stem Lake improvements. I believe there's some acreage to the northeast of that area, some residents, and I believe there's some planned development to the southwest of that area. Also notably, it's an improved coverage for the Martell area, which is signified in the right map with the arrow, and then improvement for the Sprague area as well. So that's the general explanation of the improved coverage to the east side, and obviously you'll have better coverage on Highway 33.
So this is the map for the one carrier?
Correct.
So other carriers may have different coverage? Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
And you're planning to not use the tower that's originally there? It's going to move, all coverage is going to only move to the new tower?
As far as the carrier?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. Do you know the answer to that?
Commissioner, would you please restate that question?
Yeah, no, that's fine, because you're researching our answers for our other questions. Is the carrier still planning to use both towers, or you're planning to completely not use the original tower that's there right now and switch over to this new tower?
Commissioner, Verizon is looking to remove themselves from the existing tower and move to this tower based on the coverage map and how to kind of fill in some additional gaps in coverage and to increase their service area here with that little bit taller tower.
Okay. So as far as, since the map is cut off on the west, if you move the,
right, it's gonna
move it over 3/8 of a mile, will people to the west lose coverage potentially that we don't see?
I think that's the potential, but the intent is to provide a plus net as far as coverage.
So my question is, the original tower will no longer have 3 carriers because ostensibly one of the carriers will be moving to the new tower. Are there 2 other carriers who, because the new tower needs 3 carriers, yes, to operate, are there 2 other carriers who will be coming in for the new tower, and then what happens with the old tower that still needs a carrier in order to be functional?
It was up to 3 carriers.
Oh, it can up to, it does not, not a minimum,
has to
okay.
be 3.
Just out of curiosity, how many carriers are there that we're talking about? And we've heard of 3. I imagine your competition are the other carriers, Sprint, T-Mobile.
Commissioner, that's correct. I guess there are, a variety of different users or end users for the tower. I know that the users, I don't know who all is on that existing tower, but there are other users then that could fulfill and use the locations on this particular new tower, to serve their needs.
And they could move from the existing tower to your tower and get broader range as well.
Commissioner, that's correct. If their need is fulfilled better by this particular tower, I guess kind of open market with that, they can decide to move, or a new carrier that is not in the area can also come and place their equipment on this tower.
Okay, additional questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, we'll have a chance for additional questions after we hear testimony. All right, at this time, we'll move into testimony in support of this application. Is there anyone here who wishes to testify in a neutral capacity on this application? Okay, then we will move to testimony in opposition. Thank you for your patience.
I didn't come here for this. Just for me, if the guys can speak up into the microphone, I'm not very good at hearing, so, when they stand over here. So, I'm here to sort of
With your name and address, please.
Rick Hill, 6705 Southwest 16th Street. There was a testimony here at this meeting about the safeness of 5G. I think it was by the health department. It's military grade. It's weaponized. You take 3 towers, you turn it on this person over here, he's dead in 60 seconds, okay? It was also designed with the clot shot in mind. There's a item in the clot shot, most people call it the vaccination, which is called hydrogel. Hydrogel encapsulates E. coli, SV40, which is a cancer-causing agent, and hemorrhagic fever. And when the World Economic Forum is talking about a virus being released this next year, that's going to devastate the world. That is much, much worse than COVID-19. This is what they're talking about. They're using 5G to activate the hydrogel, which releases these 3 diseases. So our government is not looking out for the people's best interests. It never has. We're at war right now. This is World War III. Even though you're not watching the bombs drop, not the bullets flying, but we're at war with the U.S. government because they approved the shot. And 1 out of 247 people have died from the vaccination in the first 60 days of receiving it. Now, normal humanity would say, hey, this is killing way too many people. Back in 1980s when they came out with a new vaccination, I think it was 1986, they had like 43 people in the entire country die. They removed it off the market. Not being done today. So, no, 5G is not safe. I don't care what they say. I can give you the research by our U.S. military about 5G that will confirm it is weaponized, okay? You don't want it. We don't have it in this city. I hope not. I hope we don't have it in this state because I live here. Okay, it changes DNA. So, please, one of you people, please all I ask is that you put this 5G, let them have 4, okay? We got a lot of 4s. Let's just stay with 4. But can you put this 5 thing on abeyance until you review the documentation I can send you? I'll be happy to provide it. I didn't bring it with me because I didn't know I'd run into this issue. So, please, for the people, thank you.
Additional testimony and opposition.
Good afternoon. Scott Mink, 17155 Southwest 72nd, Martell. I submitted yesterday what I'm basically just going to read. I just want to go on the record. So my name's Scott Mink, and I live directly south of the property where this new tower's going to go. And I wanted to make sure my opinion's expressed. I'm against this, of course. The application process here seems very convenient for everybody, and I understand that. Except for those of us who actually live in the area that's going to be impacted by a 239-foot tower. It's good for the county, so you can check off a box and provide service to other areas, which I understand is important. We all have missions to accomplish. The landowner is going to get paid, but they also don't have to deal with the negative impacts because they don't live there. The tower company gets to sell a lease, which again, financially is great. But we don't need better service in the area where we're at. The map that they just showed, you can clearly see we have purple, where those of us who live there, who are going to be impacted by this tower, we have great service. We don't need it. The existing tower down the road, less than a mile, provides great service. After reviewing the application from Powder River, they're factual in a lot of instances, but there's some areas where I feel it's just subjective, obviously, to try to get an application passed. Location preferences for this tower should focus on the area of need, in my opinion. If the county would like to provide better service to Blue Stem, Martell, and Highway 33 east over to Highway 77, then residents living in that area would be receiving the improvement. They should also maybe be the ones hosting the tower, just as my family already hosts one about 0.8 of a mile away from where I live currently. Mr. Will brought this up, and I appreciate this. He said to state that this is not a sensitive area is not true. Just because we're zoned as ag, it is sensitive for those of us who live there. So I appreciate that comment. The due diligence section in 10.09 of the application, from what I see, was basically somebody getting on the Lancaster County GIS site, which is what I was able to do, and looking up the phone numbers for people who live in this kind of this special half-mile buffer that's been identified. I think it's important to note that 4 of the 12 landowners identified are direct family members of the applicant, and then another 5 of the other 12 said that they weren't interested. But there's no indication of why they weren't interested, and I think that's really important to not just say they're not interested, but why. Because I think a lot of the answers might be that they don't want the tower in the area because of the negative impacts. And when I say negative impacts, I don't mean I don't know the medical stuff. I'm just saying how a huge 235 tower impacts our lifestyles, our homes, and everything that we work for. My wife and I are the new kids on the block, and we've been here for over 20 years. So I guess back to this. The information should be part of a well-prepared due diligence effort, not just saying they're not interested. I'd like to know what other efforts are made by Verizon or Powder River to find locations for this site that did not include a landowner who doesn't live in the area that's impacted. I believe it's practical to state that putting a tower in the area that the improvements are needed is fair and reasonable. We do not need improved service in our area. The proposed site is just under 4,000 feet from my house, which sounds like a lot, but there's nothing out there. And I think when you get out there and you look, the spatial areas, it's not a lot. Half a mile between these two towers is not a lot of area. I look to the northwest at my house, I see the tower every day with its blinking light, nonstop. With this new tower, it's gonna be right out my bedroom window every single morning when I crawl out of bed. I'm gonna see a blinking light, and it's gonna be I'm gonna see it from my front yard, my driveway, everywhere. So it will have a negative impact on my family, and I also believe on my property values. Section 1010 of the application number 6 states that this tower is taller than most structures in the surrounding area. that it will not be a unique, and it'll be similar to power poles, transmission lines, and grain silos. This is kind of a ridiculous comparison. Power poles are 40 feet, transmission lines were 80 to 100 feet, and the one grain silo in the area is 80 feet, none of which require the beacon on top of them. This new tower, in comparison, dwarfs them in size. The renderings in this application do not depict any reasonable way of the impact in the area. They're 2D images from the viewpoint that the applicant wants you to see and doesn't actually show the visual impact to the rest of us who live there. There's mention that they're similar to occasional cell towers in the area. 2 towers in the same section is not common at all. I've driven around, I've looked, there's not 2 towers this close to each other anywhere in the area. I understand the desire for the 5G service in the area, but to put it in an area that doesn't need improved service on a landowner who doesn't live in the area is really unfair for those who live there. I think that it's not unreasonable to expect Verizon or Powder River, whoever, to spend a little more time, maybe a little bit more money, to go out and find land in the area that needs a service and let the people there suffer kind of some of the impacts to get the improved service.
That's time.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony and thank you for the letter. Just so you know, when you submit a letter, it does go into the record and we receive them so we have a chance to read them, but I appreciate you being here today. You mentioned that your family does host a tower, or you have a lease for one somewhere else?
We don't. No, I'm just saying on the section that we currently live on, the existing tower is already there, and that's what we see from our house. I mean, it's very, very visible. In fact, a few years ago, the blinking light went haywire, and it was white at night instead of red, and our whole house was lighting up. It was really bright. Like, our son had to go to a different bedroom because it was so bright. It doesn't always happen, but it has happened.
Okay. All right. Are there other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Additional testimony in opposition.
You don't notice my knees are shaking. But anyway, thank you for hearing me talk, and I also appreciate the questions you've asked. You've actually brought up a few very insightful questions. We own land, obviously.
State your name and address.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sure. My name is Joyce Howlett, and I live at 3780 West Roca Road, which is technically Martell. I'd also like, I don't know, have any of you ever been out there? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Because West Roca Road is really Highway 33, so this is right on that. I would say that, as you know, 50 letters were sent out to landowners, so there are, not all of those people live there, but it's a fairly large number, and it's near Blue Stem Lake, so there's quite a few. There are a lot of families that I think this would affect. And my question too, and which I appreciate you brought up, was that there is already a tower there. And the 5G, I know the neighbor that was concerned about that, but that really is something to consider. If this would not be suitable to be put in Lincoln near residences, I wonder why this really needs to be approved for us. And I don't mean just me, but all the, for all the people that live out there. Why is it okay to have this size of a tower? And if there are smaller towers, granted, nobody wants a tower, but this is so extreme. Why not have more towers? Is there anything wrong with that, having more smaller towers? Let me just check my notes here. Yes, and the coverage, so far our coverage area is good, and granted, this is part of our life, but I just question, if it's not good enough to put near your home, I don't see the point in having it near our homes, and thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Nope, you're good, thanks. But I wanted to make sure. All right, any additional testimony? Okay, ready for staff questions. Thanks, Brian. All right, go ahead, Rich. You can start.
Can we get Chris back up here, please, from the health department? Hearing what you heard from two of our testifiers here, first of all, Joyce mentioned that this isn't safe, I guess, for within the city limits, the 5G. Can you address that?
I believe there is 5G in Lincoln. I had 5G
Yeah.
back there.
I think she may have been referring to maybe the height of the tower or something, but and then the other gentleman that had a lot to say about it, weaponized and all. Have you had a chance to review those comments?
The studies he referred to, I mean, we didn't see those studies, but again, the studies that we looked at said that, as long as the towers are operated in accordance with FCC regulations, then they did not find negative public health effects. So they did not identify relative to the hydrogel or whatever term was used.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
All right, before Chris leaves, any other questions, health questions? Nope, okay, I just want to make sure.
No, I'll be here.
All right. All right, questions for Brian?
Do we know the height of that other tower?
It's about the same. I think it's 235 to 240. It's about exactly the same height. By the way, about lighting,
Yeah.
they didn't know the answer. I spoke with others from the company about the lighting, and the response that I had was the FAA regulation that's going to be applicable to this tower will be a glowing red light at night and then the white strobe during the day. So strobe doesn't operate at night. That's the one I think people find really
Except for when it malfunctions.
irritating. Except for when it malfunctions,
Anything
right?
can malfunction. But.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep. So there was that.
All right, other questions? Yeah, the conditions for approval include surety bond to be able to pay for removal. I'm just curious, how much is that?
Yep.
And kind of what is the process for that when we have things go defunct?
Yep.
Or?
So what that is, I mean, and that's part of the ordinance, and so it was included to make sure that at some point carriers decide that they don't want to be on that tower, and the tower is essentially abandoned, and it costs more to remove it than the thing's worth. It's been depreciated fully out over some number of years. The county in this case, and in the case of the city does the same. A bond will be held that can be used for that local government, either city, county, to go out and remove it. How do we come up with that amount? I'll be honest with you, we work with the client or the applicant here, and we require at least one submittal from a bona fide company that's legitimately does that kind of work for an estimate to remove that facility. And once we have that estimate, it looks legitimate, we'll check it out if need be. we require then a bond, some sort of surety to be provided to, in this case, the county, that's held in perpetuity. So, like I said, in the case somebody decides they don't want to use it anymore, but also are too busy to remove it, there will be money there to remove it.
Yeah, because, I mean, I was just thinking about whoever is the landowner who's currently receiving lease payments for the other tower that's 0.8 of a mile away.
Mhm.
This new one gets put in. Everybody decides to leave there, move there. This, you know,
Could be.
we could end up with an abandoned tower
Could be.
not very far away that is gonna.
Yeah, could be. You could wind up with additional carriers coming to the area. I don't know. I mean, so here's what I tell folks when they first call asking about special permit for a personal wireless facility. I tell them that you read through the regulations, it may not be obvious, but here's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make sure that we only have as many towers out there, we as a community, that we need to provide coverage to everybody. We're trying to limit the proliferation. So that's why it goes through all of this process, has the terminology that it does to try to limit the number of new towers. And in a case like this circumstance, requires you to eliminate others within a half mile of co-location. The concern, and I guess I have to express this to the Planning Commission. I mean, the concern, because we see it in the city as well, for a request for towers in proximity to others, we require them to demonstrate some need. We require them to demonstrate that either they can't go out on the other tower, or that there is a demonstrable need for this new one. We want to make sure that there's not some kind of economic monopoly going on. Here again, on the other tower, the fees could be so exorbitant that carriers want to, it's worth it to them to actually go build or locate on a new tower. And so we have to, it's a careful balancing act. We want to make sure that we're not assisting monopolies. At the same time, we want to make sure that there's a demonstrated need for new towers, okay? If that makes sense to everybody. So in this case, that's why we wanted some documentation of moving from one tower to the other one. What is that difference in coverage? Demonstrate a benefit to the community, your users, et cetera. And I mean, I think they've done that. I mean, I can't argue with the exhibit that's been shown. And so that's the real concern here. So.
Additional questions for Brian? All right, thank you very much. Applicant rebuttal?
Commissioners, just real quickly, I know that planning staff and Brian had mentioned it, but I was able to find the FAA and the no hazard documents that they had. And again, just to confirm, it's correct, white during the day, red at night. In terms of the, if you will, the positioning and how the light is affecting surrounding properties, it's designed that, I mean, it is, there's no light on the bottom, right? I mean, but light over time, it does filter down. And if that is something of concern, we can definitely reach out to our contacts and get an answer back to planning staff and get that to you. But again, it would all be based on what the FAA would allow to be installed on that tower. You know, the practical explanation I would use is, you know, if there's some lower flying aircraft that might be below 200 feet, I mean, you'd still want them to be able to see a light if it was flashing. That's just, but anyway, just a short explanation. But if that's something, we would be able to get that back to you. So.
Just introduce yourself.
I am Hugh Seek III. I live at 4930 Thomas Brook Lane here in Lincoln. I am the property owner of the parcel that the tower is proposed to go up on. I guess I would just like to state that it's been said that I don't live out there, so I am not impacted by the tower. I do live in the Edenton North addition in Lincoln, basically 70th and Pioneers. There are currently 4 cellular tower installations within 3/4 of the mile of the house that I live at. I certainly was given no opportunity to say I didn't want those towers there. There's one by Lincoln Christian School on 84th and Old Cheney. There's one behind the new fire station at 84th and Pioneers, and there are 2 across the street from the Walgreens, just north of 70th and Pioneers. So I do live within 3/4 of a mile of 4 cellular installations. I have owned the property out there about 30 years. Within that same section, my great-grandfather homesteaded out there, so we've been in that section for over 100 years. The other tower is not, it's distant relatives, same last name, but the other tower is not associated with my close family. So any questions for me?
It was brought up that you do still have family in the area.
Distant. I mean, their last name is the same, Seek.
Okay.
My father lives in Lincoln.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? I guess, do you have other things you want to respond to first before we move into?
Yeah, just one thing. Mr. Will talked about it a little bit, but the zoning regulations have a process for site selection that requires preferred, and if you go down to a sensitive site, there is a burden or an analysis that the applicant must go through, which our client did, and to the satisfaction of Mr. Will. You know, he had questions about the coverage map and the general benefit, but the staff recommendation is that all the zoning regulations have been met, and the information provided was sufficient for the zoning regulations. So I just wanted to emphasize that point.
Yeah.
And I would ask that you do continue to look at the ability to shield maybe at a 60-degree angle downwards, so those people living that close to the tower are shielded from the light.
Additional questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're still in public. You've had a chance for your 5 minutes, so you're not.
Have the opportunity to ask you guys if you had any questions for me on my comment.
I did look to see if there were questions, and there
Okay.
were not questions.
I
So
do have something else I'd like to share, if I may.
at this time, for this, you've already had your opportunity to speak on this item. Thank you.
Move to close public hearing?
Second, Joy.
Cruz?
Yes.
Edens?
Yes.
Fight?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
Move approval of County Special Permit 23042.
Second, Edens.
Discussion.
I don't know the right answer on these. How do you balance between the land people are there on and this huge tower that nobody really wants beside them and in their backyard? I've been to a lot of great parks in this great state, and a lot of them have really bad cell reception. We always know at Ponca State Park, you go to the hill by the office because that's where you can get reception. You can't get it at the cabins. I don't know the right balance. I think a half mile for county area is ridiculous. I think it should be more, but that's not mine to call. That's what our code says. I don't have the right answer, but I think I will be supporting it because they have, quote, checked the boxes.
I'm in opposition. I am a former Martell resident. I lived in this area, close to Bluestem. You are at a state park area. Why in the world you would need to be on your cell phone when you are allegedly enjoying nature is beyond me. But let's just say that you do need increased cell coverage. My question is regarding the cost-benefit ratio of the enhanced coverage. How many more people are going to have improved access? What kind of improved access? When I lived there 10 years ago, I worked from home just fine without 5G. It's okay. You know, this enhanced graphic here doesn't tell me anything statistically compelling. It's shaded, it goes from mauve to puce. Again, what does that mean? Give me some numbers in terms of what those enhanced coverages, how many households will that be impacting? What will that mean in terms of people's ability to, you know, log into work or access their computer to do their homework? Again, the cost-benefit ratio to me isn't really worth it. We don't know what kinds of impacts. These are awfully close together. They're just awfully close together, and I don't know that it's going to provide that much better an experience for phone coverage. And frankly, I worry about, you know, while I would love to see more competition in the cell phone carriers, I also worry about what happens to that second tower if too many people are, you know, moving over to the first. So I'm not convinced.
Discussion?
I'm like Gloria. I'm not sure either. I feel torn as well. I appreciate those who came out to speak in the neighborhood. I too would not want this in my backyard. Unfortunately, I feel like they have followed all the regulations, all the processes and procedures that we asked them to do on the county level, and I can't see why I could, you know, oppose this. So I feel like I would have to agree to pass this on and support it.
I will be supporting today, but I do believe as this, this is final action?
It's final action, so it would have to be appealed to the county board.
Correct. Okay, so I'm, as my fellow commissioner said, from the box checking standpoint and the land use, it has been vetted in that respect, so I'll keep my vote as it is.
And I think it bears repeating that whichever way this vote goes, it can be appealed to the county board of commissioners, and they will hear it all over again. But it checks the boxes, and I am concerned that the big guys coming in and rendering the smaller tower useless because the other two will probably opt to go with the taller tower. Whether it's necessary or not, I would have liked to have seen the number of households or some testimony from some people in Martell that says we can't get service. But I will vote for this, and will assume that the aggrieved will take it to the county board and they can have another hearing.
Any additional discussion at this point? Okay, it's really hard when an application meets the technical specifications, because our job as planning commissioners is to make sure that things do that. I also, the whole, I mean, two within a section, if you're driving on county roads and you've got a section road and a section road, you got two within because it's not, they're outside of the half a mile, it technically fits. The information that we had today, there were some things where we didn't necessarily have all of the information right away. And again, who is this benefiting? And did we hear from any end users who felt like there would be an enhanced improvement and benefit? I don't hear that, but from a land use specification, it meets those requirements. We did receive a lot of letters in opposition, and I did hear them and hear that concern and take that into consideration. All right, Shelley?
Cruz.
No.
Edens.
Yes.
Bite.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 5-1.
At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so.
I'd move for adjournment.
Second, Joy. Oh.
I've been here since 1 o'clock. That's when this meeting started, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The reason I came was because there was a special permit, 23048. Why haven't we talked about that?
Oh,
That was on the consent agenda?
yes. That was read at the beginning when they read the consent agenda. Item 1.7, County Special Permit 23048, the West Pioneer Cedar View CUP, is that the one you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was on
So
consent.
can I comment?
It was approved.
It was approved as a part of the
Yeah,
consent agenda.
but I didn't get a chance to rebuttal the special permit. I didn't get a chance to speak.
So when I read the things at the, and when I read at the beginning, we talk about on the consent agenda, that everything is called at the same time. And if people want to speak, then what happens is at the end of her reading all of them, we asked, does anybody want to speak on any item here?
May I please speak?
And then we pull it off. Well, I'm looking for our legal opinion. It has already passed.
Well,
So
that's
I'm not.
unconstitutional because I didn't have my right to speak and address this.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. John Ward, 605 South 10th Street with the Lancaster County Attorney's Office. As you were stating, Commissioner Ryman Yost, at the beginning when the consent agenda item is called, you ask for any member of the public to come forward and state the item, and the item will be removed. I don't know if Mr. Hill was in the room at that time, but he did not come forward at the time and request that special permit 23048, I believe, be removed. So because of that, it was read as part of the consent agenda, and I believe it was all approved by the Planning Commission. So at this time, Mr. Hill cannot make public comment on that
But I
item.
can because this is unconstitutional. If I didn't hear it, maybe I didn't hear it, but I still need, it doesn't matter whether you approved it or not. I still have my right to speak. So you know what I know before you say yes or no.
I believe there was a motion and a second for adjournment. Is that right? But no
Yes.
vote?
But no vote.
No vote.
Correct.
All right. Well, and and Mr. Hill and I can speak after the meeting, but at this time, I would ask the Planning Commission to proceed with the vote for adjournment.
And you will explain that he can
Yeah.
appeal this to the
Yeah.
county board and then
Yes.
have his say there.
Yeah.
Please. 2 minutes. That's all I need. I live,
Mr. Hill, it sets a bad precedent for other members who show up late or
I
are
didn't
planning
show
to-
up late. I was here at 1 o'clock.
And I'm happy to talk with you in the back. if you'd like.
That's not going to resolve what was already voted on, and I don't have the time and energy to come down here and fight this in an appeal. Now,
Sir-
will you please just back off your vote and let me do it?
Sir, the vote was already taken. It was a final action.
I know it's a final action. That's why I'm standing up here asking for my rights.
And I hear you,
No,
I'm
you're
telling
not.
you that.
We haven't
the
left. We're all
vote-
still here.
The vote
You-
was taken.
You voted once.
We will not reconsider it at this time. There is a motion standing on the floor. Shelley, I would
This
ask
is a
that you
quarter
will
mile
call
from
the
my
vote
house.
to adjourn.
Cruz,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Veit,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes,
We are adjourned.
thank you.